I'm Supervisor Rod Winchell.
Cindy Voss, Town Board.
Dan Dempsey, Town Board.
Terrence Nichols, Town Clerk. Stephanie Tunick, Town Attorney.
Sherry Miller, Town Council.
McCoy, Town Board.
Todd Page, Highway Superintendent.
Sean Mears, Deputy Highway Superintendent.
Arnold Danforth, please.
Cheryl Gross, Director of Finance.
Thank you. We had everything. What we're going to do is open a public hearing on the town solar moratorium law.
Amendments to the solar law.
Thank you, stand corrected. Entertain a motion from any member. Open the hearing, sir.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any comments from the board? We had some,
We had comments back from Lincoln Tully. I know they were received a little tight. I don't know if everybody has a chance to review them. Any thoughts on them? Or
we also had comments from Chairman Reichel also. Planning board.
Did you incorporate Lincoln Tully's in this one that we got last night?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and I did that for purposes of being able to notice changes if they do so, or if they are adopted by the board.
If there's no questions from the board or any, I'll open up to the audience. Are we good with that? Anthony, I'll turn on the microphone. Anybody starting this row? Solar moratorium?
Solar law.
Solar, excuse me, solar law, stand corrected again. Raise your hand, we'll start from the front way, work our way to the back. Anybody? Right side is good. Left if you're sitting there. Yes, ma'am. Come on down.
Hi,
Welcome.
how are you? You know me, I'm Barbara Lerner. Our property is on the corner of 17K and 747. I'm a little bit confused by so much interest in the solar moratorium law when there's so little interest in other areas of development in the town. And maybe I'm completely off the mark on this. I was at the planning board work session the other morning, and they're discussing the difference between a solar farm and a solar facility. Is one of them larger than the other, and how you differentiate? This is basically an industry that has very little environmental impact. I have a gripe with glyphosate, but not every developer uses glyphosate to kill off the vegetation. Every one of them has, that I have been aware of, has a performance bond at the end, a decommissioning bond rather, so that there's really, the long-term impact is minimalized, but there doesn't seem to be as much engagement in other projects that have more permanent effects on our community. And I'm kind of why the focus is on solar and not on everything.
I personally had on the decommissioning, I didn't like it, what was written. I was worried about the landowners. A lot of the landowners that are applying for the solar law are in their senior years, very in their senior years, and they're trying to create revenue to stay here in New York, which is tough. I personally felt that they were a target for somebody that wanted to rent land, basically rent for 20 years, and they basically are going to be taxed as if they were a power plant. So that was one of my biggest concerns is becoming supervisor. Is you're no longer a farm, you're a power plant. So my thinking was protecting the unaware citizen of basically being sold weekly on the worldwide market, not knowing who owns who owns the company that you just signed a deal with, that's all. That's my personal, there's a couple more things, but basically, the decommissioning was certainly a big problem, since I'm familiar with mining operations and other
Of
things like
course,
that,
of
and
course,
wastewater.
as many of us are.
And landfills, so I was wondering why it was so different for these, and not knowing who would own the property, or who would own the lease, excuse me.
I don't know if it depends on the municipality, but Cypress is one of the companies that approached us for leasing about 50 of our 75 acres in the town of Bethel because of its siting, its proximity to the appropriate power source to be able to connect in. When the lease, as it was proposed, the leases were signed, and any increase in taxes were the responsibility of the leaseholder, and not the responsibility. Their rent increased. If the taxes on the property increased, the rent increased. The rent started out very low and basically covered, what our property taxes were. I decided I didn't want to do that because I would be tying up the land for my nephews in the future. But that's a personal decision. But there really is, for properties that would not typically be used for anything other than farming, there's very little environmental impact, and the return to the community is pretty significant. We're trying to move away from fossil fuels and away from things that will contaminate our environment, and this is probably one of the least offensive of all of them. I think part of it has to do with the way I had tentatively structured the lease for them, and the bond named not only us, but the bond named the town of Bethel also. I insisted on that on the off chance that something happened to one of us and our property somehow came off the tax rolls, or became abandoned, or perhaps went for tax payment. At least that way the town would be covered by the bond. And the bond also increased over years to be able to compensate for the full decommissioning. I don't know if that's something that would be a consideration before the board.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Dwight Warrington. Initially I was pleased that you did do the moratorium on the solar, because I felt that.
You get closer to the microphone.
Okay. Originally I was pleased that you did a moratorium for the solar, because I felt that there were some things that were not well thought out, that kind of contradicted the master plan that we had, the zoning itself that this town has. But then as I read the proposal for the changes, I was very disappointed. I can see they're clearly trying to promote the solar, and I'm for solar. But I believe this town, we need to plan our future, manage the future. What do we want Montgomery to look like? There's a lot of industrial property here. People are proposing all sorts of stuff that I think would be very well suited for solar farms. Areas where increased traffic would be a negative impact on our town. Perfect industrial zone property. That'd be great for the property owner holding that industrial property. You're not going to increase traffic for the town, right? The impacts would be very negligent, and it allows those people that own that industrial power, industrial zone property, to get some sort of return that otherwise may be far, far away, or it would be a matter of a huge company coming in and investing whatever it takes to make that property usable. Right now, you're still allowing utility scale solar farms in every zone. I fail to see the wisdom on that. In this town, we have business highway zones. The purpose of that was to encourage business in an area where the roads made sense to have a business traffic lights. Now, we're gonna take that property, all right, because someone wants to do a quick deal for someone, and we're gonna use that prime location and we're gonna put solar panels on it. Or maybe we'll fill it with battery power backup system. You know, I think there's a reason why we have zoning, and we decide what we want where in this town. I'm all for solar. I think it'd be great for everybody to be able to have solar on the roof of their house, maybe have batteries, so they don't have to pay the utility company for taking the excess and then sending it back to them later on when they need it. Right now, we're putting in here, you have in there, you're including batteries. And I think in certain areas, that's great to include that. But we don't know to what extent utility solar farms, large scale solar farms, what kind of batteries are we opening ourselves up for? You know, to what extent? I see you've limited it to 20 acres, but still, people can be near you. The farm that I have behind me, I have a solar farm in my backyard, you know? And basically, I think the marketability of my house, there's a lot of people that wouldn't want that house now, just because it's got 20-something acres of solar panels on it, you know? It's there now, you know? But to have this type of sprawl throughout the town, I don't think it serves the town well. You know, we want people to come to this town. We would like to have some people maybe build a $750,000 house, all right? Who's gonna wanna build or improve property on their house if they have a nice piece of property and there's a big open fields around them? They're gonna spend $750,000 to build a house, and they may have a utility scale solar farm with who knows how many batteries all of a sudden next to them across the street. You know, I'm basically very disappointed in the result. Some of this stuff, you know, you lower the height of the fence. I don't have problems with that. I think there's certain locations where we should, as a town, be encouraging solar development. But I fail to see the wisdom of just allowing it in any zone, putting it in residential areas where we have a lot of, or even in business highway location. You know, we need to save that spot. Okay, all right, well, I think you all understand, and I think it hasn't been thought well through.
Thank you. Anyone else on the solar? Solar law? Yes, sir. You're in the wrong row, but we'll take you anyway.
Sorry. I was hesitant to speak, but I can't find my tongue anymore. My name is John Capello. I'm an attorney.
You get closer to the microphone.
Attorney with
Lift it up.
I'm also a resident of Walden, and since 2008, I have been doing presentations on solar and alternative energy and the need to provide for this, and have represented developers and municipalities throughout this area. I think there's a lot of misconceptions with solar, and on your particular law, one of the things I wanted to touch, and I don't know if it's been changed yet, but there was a prohibition of any solar in class 1 or class 2 soils. I understand the reason for it. You want to preserve soils to the extent you can. However, with land, it's very difficult when you're looking at a 20-acre parcel or a solar farm to say, I'm going to put it somewhere where there's no class 1 or class 2 soils. Maybe it's said in order to preserve farmland, no more than 40% of the parcel will be class 1 or class 2, and then more than 30%. But there are parcels that are industrially zoned in this town that have class 1 or class 2.
Could you explain what class 1 and class 2 is?
It's prime agricultural soils, and it's been a while since I read the law that couldn't come here to explain, but
it's classification of soils.
Yeah, no, I just wanted for the audience, that's what I was
so, you know, and I understand the thought process behind it is you don't want prime soils that can serve agricultural uses to be necessarily used up, But you also don't want to prohibit solar because soils, they aren't very neatly packaged. It's not like you have class 1 soils here, class 4 there, they're mixed. So you might, and then when you look at a 20-acre area, if you have 2 acres of class 1 or class 2 soils, you'd be prohibited under the version of the law that I saw from doing the solar development. The other thing I think that is a common misconception, solar is a little different than a lot of other types of developments. You want your industrial land, to the extent that you can, to be used to get ratables. Solar is a perfect complement to agricultural uses. Most of the developments I've done have been used by farmers who have farmed for generations, who take 20 or 30 acres of the land that's not the most tillable or not the most usable, and they get, not taking advantage of it, they get a very nice return from the solar company for 20 to 25 years that they can use to continue farming the rest of the land. It's promoted by the state agricultural department as a good use and very complementary to agriculture. I mean, we have to come to grips with what we're facing in climate change, and looking at some solar panels is not the end of the world. I mean, they're 12 feet high. There has been no evidence of any study that I've seen that there's any diminution of property value from living near solar. So it's a positive use. They're not, when you put them on agricultural land, it doesn't convert the land forever. When you talk about a decommissioning bond, at the end of the time, you pull up the stakes, you pull up the racking, the land can be farmed again. So it is a very compatible use to agriculture use, and it is a use, I think, that you would encourage there with appropriate, limitations to protect the land. But to just say it's prohibited in those areas, or there's no soils at all left, I think is, unfortunately, a little bit short-sighted. So I would ask you to, reconsider there. I don't know what the planning board of Lincoln Tully has said, but I think to achieve an appropriate balance would be very helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, one second, just before I lose you. My time. What I'm concerned about, I'll repeat myself, when we have senior people that someone might know, and they're 75, 80 years old, they're signing a 20, 25-year contract. Estate planning gets involved, but also the fact that we're having difficulties now. Some of these solar places we can't tell who owns them, or who owns the leases. So they've been sold 3, 4 times since they've started, which is recently. We don't know who tracks it and who pays. I don't want the taxpayers to have to say, we need a building department to track who owns it now, or the assessor department. It becomes a problem, where they're putting, say, 5 or 10-year-old technology on a 25-year contract with an 82-year-old person owns the property, trying to stay here in their retirement year. That's the one big concern I had.
Well, most of the solar companies that I know, I've represented landowners, and that was, I'm not trying to be flip, but the first thing I would tell the landowner is to hire an attorney, and most of the solar companies will pay for the landowner, as part of an option price, to hire an attorney to look out for those issues. And your permitting, since these are a special permit use, the special permit needs to be held by an entity, so they would have to, advise the board of who owns it, because you're right, most of these companies develop it and then they switch it to the actual end user, who is the company. But there are ways to track that, and that's legitimate points, to have in the law. But my point is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Have appropriate protections.
The cost of the taxpayer to have to track this, which it's already relevant. They're done overseas and out of our country. This isn't so this is what we're concerned with.
Yeah, I understand, and I think there are ways, to track that, and I think most of the companies that have come here will stay, and it is a benefit in that estate planning because it is income those people can get without having to do a reverse mortgage or do anything on a small part of their land that will allow them, to continue. So it is a use that can and should be encouraged.
Oh, thank you. Key point: get a good lawyer. That's it. Anybody else from the board? I'm sorry to interrupt. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Of course, I'm down here. Mary Ellen Matisse Walden. Just to follow up on that though, why can't, I didn't read the law, I apologize. And John knows a lot more about it than I do. That's a given. But why can't, like an annual update reporting be built into the law, just like we have a landlord registry in the village, and it's the responsibility of the landlord to make sure that they register that property and that it's kept up to date so that the building inspector knows where to find the owner. Because the owner could move out of state, could move out of the country also and own 5 properties in the village. So why can't that just be part of the law? So that you're not having to track it, it's their responsibility to get an approval that they have to constantly be updating it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Kristen Brown, Browns Road. So what's interesting is that Mr. Capella had said that the prime soils are prohibited according to the law. I think that's a, let me start over. I am pro solar, sorry. I will say that I have solar panels in my house. It heats the hot water for my house rather than having to deal with electric. But I will say that we do need to think about our farmland in general. I mean, I understand that some fields, there's prime soils over here and there's wetlands over there. I have them. But we really need to think about our farmland in general because that's how we eat. That's how we all eat. That's how we survive, is actually growing food here, which is what we have done for years. But what's interesting is what I would like to talk about in the solar law is that I sincerely hope that grazing of animals is allowed. There's been work done with Massachusetts Farm Bureau, and I know because I sit on New York Farm Bureau. And Massachusetts grazing of animals is allowed under the solar panels. Now I understand with goats, you do have to be careful not so that the panels don't get damaged because they climb all over everything. But sheep, heavier, smaller animals to the ground, it's an alternative if people are upset about glyphosate or spraying of chemicals underneath these panels. It would help in weed control. So I just ask that that's considered in the law. Thank you.
And I did grow up on goat's milk.
I'm sorry.
Anyone else? Okay.
So, I would suggest the board leaves the public hearing open because we're waiting for the comments back from the county, which will be received, well, the 30 days will hit prior to the next work session, so we'll be able to make a decision then, and it aligns our timeline with the moratorium. In the meantime, if the board wants to submit to me, they are okay with the most current law, which was sent yesterday, and which is on the town board's website, then we can do that, and any changes, of course, minor changes, nothing substantial, otherwise then we'd have to renotice.
Is the county gonna see the new changes? Like Kelly changes?
Right, yeah.
They will.
I will send it to them. I don't know if they'll be able to respond to them, but they're not considered substantial changes, so we don't have to renotice and resend to them.
And the plan, did you see the planning board comments?
I just got a copy of those.
I think there were some good comments that should get incorporated into this.
Okay, I will do that, and as long as they're not substantial, and if they are substantial, we can discuss our options there, but I just got a copy and I will take a look. From Chairman Reichel?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to continue the public hearing until the work session on October 17th.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Under new business, we need to set a date for Blue Water public hearing for Blue Water Shellfish rezone. Set a date before the 17th. week.
Notice and all that.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's up to the attorney.
It's up to the board what they wanna do. If you wanna do a special meeting for it, it's fine. It can wait until the 17th.
We got a lot on the 17th too. I don't know if we wanna, if we have time to set it up before that would be good.
I know I will not be here
Next week?
next week.
Okay.
So,
You're gonna be here either? Okay. You'll be here? I'll be here, I think. Okay, so we have no dates between now and next week, we'll have the week to the 17th, or you're gonna do it earlier than that?
for noticing purposes,
Like a
it
Monday
would,
or Tuesday or something like that, or?
We can't make it.
we can't make it in terms of notice,
No?
because we'd have to take out notice, we would have to give the notice to the paper tomorrow. And it would be published on Wednesday. I mean, the earliest that we,
Earliest it would be published, if
No,
you
we
give me
can't.
the legal ad tomorrow, would be Wednesday the
and then
9th.
that's, yeah, you would have to give at least 10 days, and there's no way that you could. notice it.
Okay, so the 17th. That's it? That's the only choice? Okay. So, any member like to make, we gonna make a motion on that? It's a public hearing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any member would like to entertain a motion? Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Let's see what else we have here.
Special district.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. B, item B, special districts.
Okay, the special districts, there's 33 of them, 33 districts, and I have to send a public hearing notice and stuff envelopes in like 400 envelopes. Can this be done at the November 7th? Meeting? Now, they have to adopt the budget by November 20th.
Yes.
So that night they could open and close the public hearings and hopefully adopt the special districts.
We're gonna November
And
7th.
then we'll need to set another meeting for them to adopt the budget, or, yeah, no. Yeah, the 7th.
Special districts is separate from the budget.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. The special districts, we have to hold public hearings on all those districts. Usually, there's not many comments about it. Usually you can open them and close them and adopt them in one night. The special districts is totally separate from the budget.
Okay, so basically to set the public hearing regarding special districts for November 7th. Any member would like to make a motion? Make that motion. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved.
Thank you.
No nays.
Quickly back to Sailfish. If we notice, if we give it to the paper tomorrow, it's not gonna be published until Wednesday, and Wednesday to the 17th is only 9 days, not the 10 days.
To the, let me correct October. 1, 2, 3, 4,
My phone just died, so
7, 8.
So I think we have to push it out to November. We need the 10 days, do we? We need 10 days before the hearing.
Let me change the 4. It's a zone change.
Yes.
Actually, you just need at least 5 days prior to scheduled date of hearing.
Okay, so 17th is fine. I don't know where I'm getting the 10 days from.
So we could do it earlier?
No,
Yeah, nobody's here next week.
right.
Oh, wait a minute, adopt or change zoning laws, right? That's what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am.
You're right, at least 10 days prior to the scheduled date of hearing. At least
Okay,
10.
so we have to push it to November 7th. Unless, or if the board wants to, we can do it after the 17th.
So,
We can special meeting on Thursday, the 24th. That's Halloween, next Thursday.
you can do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe Thursday?
Court going on here Tuesday and Wednesdays. I know it's downstairs, it does get a little busy here. Monday are your
We
planning
can, we
board,
don't have to,
zoning
I mean, we
boards.
also don't have to do it at night, if any, I mean, I know it's an inconvenience to make it here during the day, but it would just be to, assuming the county, comments aren't anything substantial, it would just be to adopt it and send to the state.
What, is this for the solar law though, or the blue
No,
fish?
this is for-
Yeah.
For Blue Water, you wanna do it, you wanna do it?
Real fresh.
I would do it, I would do it at like 6 o'clock on a Tuesday or Wednesday, that's all. Just for the public, and let you hear.
That's up to the board.
Does the public wanna be here?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I'm sorry, my head's in sorry, I'm still on solar, so I apologize. For Sailfish, we need the 10 days, so we can do a special meeting, or we can push it to November 7th, and there is no rush to do it then, because I was accounting for it.
I would do it.
Anytime after
Yeah, the 7th is their
October
meeting.
19th is 10
Even
days.
like the 22nd. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Doesn't matter to me.
Right. Any member would like to make a motion for the 22nd?
Did we do a motion for the other motion? 'Cause
We have to set a date.
Because
We did
did
already
already
though
though.
for
Yeah.
Did it
the.
for 17.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we have to
Yes.
undo, we have to undo it.
Yes.
All right, gotcha.
So, Dan made it, I think? So you'll have to.
I'll rescind the motion that I made to have the public hearing set for October the 17th.
Excellent. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank
Or
you.
Cindy
It was
did.
October 7th, not 17th though.
17th, it was that
You're
early.
rescinding the motion for October 17th.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Nothing for
Good.
7th, okay.
I never rescinded the motion. It's good, I've learned. Second. Give a
So
second,
she
right?
seconded it, so do you want to second it, Cindy?
I'll second, yeah.
All in favor of rescind the motion for 17?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, any member would like to make a motion for the 22nd of October at 6 PM? Public hearing is a Tuesday.
What day is that?
Tuesday.
Court is downstairs, it's just a little busy.
Yeah, but they're just gonna work it.
I'll have to wash the bathrooms. Okay, so.
I actually was here for the planning board special meeting, and it was a little obnoxious with the court being open.
All right,
So,
we'll be fine.
yeah.
Security's already here. This is paying double. Okay. November 22nd? October 22nd, excuse me. Okay, October 22nd,
At 6 o'clock.
2019, 6 PM, 1800 hours. Finish motion? Dan, you got
I'll make the motion.
second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. No nays.
Is that for sailfish? 'Cause it's hard to get
Yes.
back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Costas, can you meet me outside?
You did say 7, right? What time? 6.
6 PM, 1800 hours served. We have item C, Eagle Scout project presentation, Nate Walker, Troop 33. You've been waiting a while.
I'm Nate Walker, I'm from Troop 33, I'm doing my Eagle Scout project at the Montgomery Food Pantry. So I'll be painting the inside of it, the first 2 rooms, the entryway and the first storage room. I'll be labeling a lot of the stuff in there using whiteboards and magnets on the back of them. And in the back garage storage room, I'll be doing whiteboards by hanging them on the walls. I'll be replacing the electrical things, the covers on them. Doing a large corkboard or whiteboard in the first storage room for putting notices on and things like that. A shelf for the broom closet for the microwave that they have in there that they're not using at the moment, that is sitting out and open that they don't use. Reorganizing the broom closet and getting a shelving unit for the mops, for something to hang them on. And yeah, that's about it.
It's a lot of work.
What about the attic?
Yeah, I don't know about
I
that.
think I mentioned that one.
Yeah.
Are you're just changing the covers on them?
Yeah, just the covers.
Just the
Yeah.
covers.
I'm gonna have adults be doing that, not any kids.
You have somebody qualified electrician doing that, I think.
Probably, yeah.
That was mentioned, I think.
Yes. Yes.
I figured, when we reviewed this, I said, the attic, we got most of the stuff out of the attic, chief, but the young and flexible, couldn't clean up job. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, it sounds great.
Yeah, it does sound really good. Appreciate it, yeah.
Your interest.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Yes. Yes. Any member would like to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Okay.
Or second it.
Did you second it? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So moved. Okay, D. Resolution of the Town Board of Town of Montgomery to adopting a New York State Climate Smart Communities Pledge and authorizing the Town of Montgomery to Conservation Advisory Council to work with the Village of Walden to implement these efforts. Say on this?
You want me to?
Go ahead, all you keep it really short.
No pun intended.
Go ahead, just give us a little scoop on it. Come on.
I was looking to see if Patricia was here. I guess she's not here. Because Walden adopted the Climate Smart Resolution, and of course it's New York State saying that nobody is going to listen to anything we say from Albany, so we're going to do this. We're going to have you guys do all this stuff from the bottom up, and maybe then you'll do it. But that's how New York is. We're a home rule state, right? We don't want to do what Albany says. So that's my take on the Climate Smart Initiative. And then when you sign on to it, and of course we're an MS4 community. So that I think makes it even more significant that we go ahead and do it. Because we have to do a lot of these things anyway, being MS4. And so we might as well get points for them instead of getting always slapped on the wrist by DEC. And when you get the points, then it helps when you go for grants. And they say, oh, you've done and then they move your little application up the ladder. And it gets higher consideration than if you don't sign on to Climate Smart. So it's a way of trying to get all the local communities to take environmental responsibility on a local level.
What are these things you're saying?
What?
What are these things?
Well, a lot of it's, you can ask Stephanie, a lot of it's stuff we already have to do as MS4.
Yes.
Community education, I mean, just different types of, they have a whole list.
I saw it.
Yeah. A lot of it, we can just go down the list right now and say, we're already doing a lot of these things.
All right, we did a lot of them already, yeah.
Right, right.
Energy efficiency with the building.
Right, and you get
LED
credit,
lighting.
you get credit for all that. Whatever you've done with within the past 10 years, I think. You get under this program, once you sign on, you get credit for retroactive credit.
And another component of the resolution, thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
Another
Well, I just wanted to say something about, you wanted me to say something about the CAC, why that's part of this request?
Go ahead.
Because Walden doesn't have a CAC, and they would have to set up a task force. But we already have the CAC for the whole town, so why not use that as an umbrella?
Excellent. Thank you. Go
And then that's shared services.
ahead.
So we need a motion.
Yeah, any conversation, or would you make a motion first, or everybody good with it?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Joined at the hip. Records destruction, excuse me, authorization, clerk, assessor's office, town clerk, Tara Sickles.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. That was fast. Okay. Delaware Engineering, agreement and implement a flow management plan. Anybody get a chance to take a look at that? Pretty interesting, right? Michael, is there, Bill Bright here from Delaware Engineering? Okay. William Bright. Mr. Bright, welcome. You want to give us a quick little summary of?
In 2018, the wastewater.
Take the microphone real quick. I just put you on the spot.
In 2018, the wastewater treatment plant exceeded 95% of the design flow. Under New York State law, if you do that, you have to submit a flow management plan. We were retained to prepare a flow management plan. We have submitted the flow management plan for your review. You have to sign it before we can send it to DEC. That's what we're here to ask and answer any questions that you have on the plan, or that's it. If anybody have any questions? One of the things we did improve was the INI. We reduced the limits. In June, you had a camera truck come in and found a major leak of infiltration. When that was repaired, the flows dropped down to below 95%. So we resolved the issue with that repair, but the study provided an overall snapshot of the condition of the collection system, which is in fairly difficult shape, but we didn't do an in-depth study. We looked at manholes and we looked at flows, and we made some recommendations in there to do a more strategic study on the entire system to see what the condition is, because it's old, and particularly the concrete structures are in really bad shape. The pipes seem to be not bad. A lot of the pipe is plastic and ductile iron, and not ductile iron, but cement asbestos. It seemed to be in halfway decent shape, not terrible, but all the concrete manholes and things were in rough shape from the type of waste that the treatment plant gets and produced by the specific design, which is septic tanks that pump in the septic tank effluent into the sewer mains, and that comes to the treatment plant. Septic tank effluent has hydrogen sulfide in it. It's highly corrosive. It dissolves concrete and steel, and it's probably been running for 40 years or so, right? So it's dissolved a lot of the concrete, which are the manholes. We don't know to what extent. We think the entire system should be video inspected and determine the full extent of what the condition is. One of the recommendations was to figure out what we have to do to get away from the step system, which is the septic tank effluent pump type of design, and to do a modern gravity waste system where the wastewater isn't as corrosive and is easier to treat. You have a lot of damage at your wastewater plant just because of the corrosivity of the wastewater. The step systems are good for small systems, but your system has grown from a small system to a rather extensive system. It's large, it's long, and the fact that highly corrosive waste travels from one end to the other, it damages the entire route. So we saw a lot of damage along the way. One of our recommendations is to do a more in-depth analysis of the collection system. and figure out how that fits into your planning and growth, because the system as it is now, it's limited. I don't know how close it is to being at its useful life, but it's close enough that we should know. We should get in there and figure that out. So that's our recommendation.
What diameter is most of them?
Your force mains are anywhere from 2 inch to 4 inch. The AC pipe is 8 inch. So that's the range of pipe. The plastic pipe was all in good shape that we saw. A lot of the AC pipe was okay. But those small diameters, we can't put cameras in them, and it's all septic tank effluent. And the pump stations are in tough shape because of the concrete, and we have a proposal in to pump sodium, not biosulfate, bioxide, which inhibits the corrosion. And it's really designed for odor control, because the plant really reeks. I mean, this literally, I drove over 84 today, and you can smell it, because it's the hydrogen sulfide. As soon as it hits oxygen, it off gases, and it's explosive. I mean, it's that stuff. When it mixes with water, forms sulfuric acid. So, and that's all from septic tank effluent. So we might still retain some of the step system, especially up on Lakeview. But what we would do is we would treat it, and we put treatment at the 17K pump station to get rid of the corrosivity. So at least from that point forward, you wouldn't have that highly corrosive wastewater damaging the system, and it's not going to be good for your new treatment plant either. I mean, it's not. It has to be converted to an aerobic process from what it is now, and that takes up tank size and oxygen. So it makes running the plant more expensive too. Yeah, something needs to be done.
What's our flows right now then?
They're low.
The weekday flow, which is the highest, is ever since the repair was made, is 110,000 gallons per day, pretty much on the nose every day. And then on the weekend, it's down to like 80,000 gallons a day.
That leak was huge. I looked at every lineal feet of camera of videotape that you had, and I looked at that about 3 or 4 times, and that leak was enormous. It was under hydrostatic pressure. You could see it was coming in under pressure.
Was the leak visible at ground level?
No. You had to get the camera in the. They found it with the camera in the sewer main.
So it was just dispersing out into the.
It was like spraying everywhere. It was right near a manhole, right?
I can't remember how far.
Yeah,
you couldn't see it from the manhole. You need the camera.
Yeah, you needed the camera to
from
find
the
it.
manhole.
You need the camera to find it. But
I have a video of it. Come on
Yeah.
anytime to take a look at it.
Yeah, I know what they all look like.
There's just one other quick thing we touched on too, is on the adjusting the level of the tank baffle. Some economic ways.
Okay,
of
so
actually
the
improving it.
wastewater plant, currently, the permitted level is 147,000 gallons, 500, right? We, through this process, we analyze how much it could actually take. And if we raise the discharge pipe in the chlorine contact tank about 1.5 feet, 2 foot, we can probably treat 170,000 gallons at the plant. Because what that gives us is it gives us about 1.5 feet of contact time in the tank. It gives the tank more volume. So you can get your 20 minutes of chlorine contact time in the existing tank without having to, I mean, the other thing is you could put a 2,000 gallon septic tank in for probably less than $10,000 and do the same thing. But it's just a simple fix to get you another 20, 30,000 gallons, which I think it's a good idea, even though you're gonna build a new plant. You wouldn't be under the gun. You'll be well under the 170. Your flows.
DEC would buy into that?
We do it. We've done it in the past, so it's not. I mean, I looked at the data. It's pretty. It's right there. I mean, and it would be a part of. I mean, we would tell them it's a part of the plan that we are doing the bigger plant.
Right.
we don't want to have a gun to our head, and, I mean, we want to go for funding, there's things you want to do to make sure that when you build the plant, you build it right. I mean, certainly getting grants, I mean, that's something we should be looking into, the WIA grants, the water infrastructure grants. I mean, it's a process to do it, but if you could get a $3 million grant and reduce your capital costs, I mean, that just lowers your rates, and that's what we do. We usually, I mean, we have an entire group within our company that gets the grant money so our clients can build their projects. And the water infrastructure program is a new program, it's probably 4 years old. And there's money there, and we've been pretty successful. I mean, last year we got 8 out of 11 of that we applied for. And it makes a big difference. We're doing a water plant in Dutchess County. It was a $2 million project. We got a $1.1 million grant. So the water rates aren't gonna go up anywhere as near as what they were gonna go up without the grant money.
You also said, I think, you give me a percentage of how many grants you got that were given out in this our area, and I think you had like 27 of them or something.
Well, yeah, we've been pretty, that's over time, yeah. They come, every year you do the grants, and it's just something that we do. I mean, we've had good success doing it.
It sounds like it, yeah, that's good. And as far as the comprehensive planning, working it with a planner, that would be.
Well, we would work, I mean, if we were doing it, we would certainly work with you. If you have a master plan, we would work with that, just to get a general idea on you know, where and how, and I mean, certainly the pipes, certainly a lot of the pipes need to be enlarged. The design has to be changed on all of the commercials downstream from the pump station, that they're on septic systems, and then that gets pumped in. I would rather see that to be raw sewage pump stations. You can still pump it in the same force main. You just don't want it to be septic. You want it to be have to have oxygen, and which is the normal way for a larger system to work. The step systems are usually smaller systems.
Excellent. Anybody questions?
So all you have to do is, you know, sign the thing, and they'll mail it to DEC, and then they'll have comments, and we'll meet with them, and we'll go through them. If you need us back, let us know.
That sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So what we need is permission for the supervisor to sign the flow management report.
Statement of authority.
Statement of authority, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Need the same?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're good, Mike, I think, right?
Not me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good,
Stevie,
good.
let me know.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out. G, we have a RFP town planner. Anybody comprehensive plan featured out there? Does anybody have any? Okay. In our last session.
Well, I would just like to say the way I feel, and I'm only one person on the board. But I think that you asked some good questions, Rod, about the water and sewer, and I think that you're right, because you probably want to incorporate that in this. And it seemed to me that neither one of those planners actually were equipped to incorporate that in. So, I mean, I think
Yeah,
that
I wasn't sure
makes
what
it-
they were, I was trying to lead
Right,
into that too.
exactly,
You know, whether like,
exactly.
how that would
And-
correspond, yeah.
I think that's gotta be a big part of the master plan, you know, it all goes together, you know?
Did you, one of the things, I drafted some thoughts down, it was a little long, but
Right.
it was kind of like,
Right.
thoughts on it, it has to go hand
And I
in
mean,
hand.
to me, neither one of those companies could help that. I mean, could we go out and look for another company that could do all of it?
Well,
You know,
Or do you work with both, you use two?
what we have to find out is that the company, that like Delaware, does a lot of the grants, a lot of the planning, a lot of the utilities, and, we have to find out if they're gonna work hand in hand with a planner.
Right, that's what I was
You
saying,
know.
because I don't think your planner's gonna handle what he can.
No, no.
but at
no.
the end of the day, you're looking at a much more expense than just the planner. You know, we gotta get an idea of what the whole circle is gonna be.
Right.
You know?
But it is the old adage question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You
That's
have
the
to
thing.
figure out where the development is gonna be to know where the services have to be.
One of the things I want to say out loud, I noticed, it was a little strange. If you look at Maple Avenue, Ridge Road, New Road, all those roads, and you say, how the heck did that get I-1 zoning next to 84? There's no way to get to it. And there's never, a lot of those places, you're never gonna see water and sewer. So I'm like thinking back, well, I was here when 84 was built. I'm looking, there was never any service road there. I think over the years that got brought up until they brought the Beaver in. With the fact that, there's no way to get to those without going through residential neighborhoods now. You're in very narrow roads that we see. It's like, so how are the industrial roads, and are we ever gonna have water and sewer
There.
zoned in those areas? It doesn't make any sense, and it's certainly, one of the things I looked at. So that was like, it's like putting in industrial areas before you ever had any vision of water and sewer. If anybody coming into this town, first thing they said, we've never been anywhere in rural upstate New York or Texas or Arkansas, and we've never not seen water and sewer. Only in Montgomery, New York. So that was one of the things that was very interesting when the investors come in and say, hey, I wanna do a project here, where's our water and sewer? We don't have, it's fragmented and things like that. So I think, like you said,
Yeah, but
having a plan that's a comprehensive plan has to coincide with the water and sewer deal. We don't have any water and sewer at Scott's Corners. It's like, otherwise,
And like, we just in the budget put $100,000 in, and that, I mean, is gonna get totally eaten up with just the planner. Nevertheless, like an engineer.
well, that's the thing, it's gonna have to be
or-
bonded. I mean, it's really, I think it's such a big project, we're gonna have to have a band and go into a bond on it. That's really what I was looking at, not to fund it, say, when I wrote some of my thoughts up, I said, I don't see this, I see the planning being more like $500,000 to $1 million. So we're not gonna take that out of fund balance. I don't think that's, at least not having a way to plan, that to be done. One of my big thoughts, and I said this verbally to pretty much everybody, so I'll say it again. Not having water and sewer at Scott's Corners, you would have been called, that old AMP would have been called Adams 20 years ago, or Hannaford's or something like that. It's ridiculous. Some of the easements are here, they've been here for 40 years. So somebody had a vision of that, and those properties on Scott's Corners, like Walden Savings Bank and other properties, you see them digging their septic tank, septic leach fields up. So it's one of those things that I don't like to see, even on this road, Nugent House or anybody else digging their leach fields up. It's one of those, we should have water or sewer, which is better for the environment than a septic tank. And if anybody ever grew up around here, and members of Osiris, we knew that when we swam in Osiris and what it was like. It was basically everybody's septic went into Osiris, so it was very, very green during the summer. So that was, so having a controlled system, centralized system, is better than having a leach field, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So that's my spiel. I did swim in Osiris, so.
And you drank oat's milk.
Anybody else? I mean, it's something you want to look at further to see if we get Delaware to work with one of the firms?
Yeah.
Well, I think that maybe we should
funding?
get Delaware together with one of the people that we like, because I would like to say that I would like to maybe negotiate a little bit with, I personally like the, I can't think of the name, who was
The first one.
Yeah.
And,
Maximilian, Statch, Nelson, Pope, and Gore.
NPV.
Not the individual gentleman.
Yeah, because I think, if this Delaware has the ability to help with those kind of questions or guide, I still think you need planners to try to help and get the vision of what the community is kind of looking for, and how we should proceed, because it is the age-old question, what comes first?
The chicken or
It's what you fight with all the time, because
And I'm not sure they understood how fragmented our water and sewer is, to actually, how do you zone that if it's not, you know, capable? They have to have an understanding of that too.
and you have to have the money for the development there before you can really put the district in, because who's gonna pay for it?
So everybody's kind of opinion is we'll get Delaware together with maybe NDP here?
Right, just sit down and, you know, we can maybe negotiate.
NP and V.
Right.
Okay, I agree. So I'll work on that, see if I can coordinate that,
Yep.
with that.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
We're not awarding the bid yet, though?
No, we're not sure what the cost would be either, you know, we gotta get them all on the same page. Make sure all the oars are in the water.
And then negotiating it off, they just gave the proposal.
Right, just get them together in one room and see if we can maybe, you know, look at it and see if they're comfortable with that, we may have to put out for a rebid if that's the case. Item H, motion to accept standard work day and reporting resolutions for appointed elected officials.
I'll make that motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, aye. Okay. Anything for executive session at all? Good.
I have a topic that can go with this executive session, or we could move it to the next one. I have it, I briefly spoke to Cindy prior to, but I didn't get a chance to.
You wanna go in? Is it a personnel matter? Or
No,
legal
it's
matter?
possible litigation.
Okay, you wanna go into executive session real quick?
Yeah, I would like to see
Would-
the information from Stephanie.
Motion for
I'll make that motion.
For a legal matter?
Yes.
All in favor to go into executive session? All right. Aye. We'll be right back. 20:05.
Is there agendas over there? One here. That's the last one?
After they get back to the company on upgrade of IT servers, and then just consolidate more. Good.
What? No, he was talking. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Seventh inning stretch here. I just kind of think. My name's Al. Dave. Oh, yeah. How you That's very cool. Got really cool
Hi guys. Have a good Still not. I don't see anything. You get in trouble with. Yes, exactly.
You're here for what? Just see what's going on.
It shows tonight. But these are
We're on the opposite side.
Somebody lets me take it
Hopefully. Well, you got permission a while back to get that house down, right? You got that done? I haven't been. What are you gonna do?
Opposed to I'm glad you got here because my battery was dying.
I didn't even think of that too.
It's all good.
Let's see how much more we got when they come back. A lot left on the agenda when they come back.
No. Update on the upgrade. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. And then,
Fighting for life.
I don't know. I'm gonna, I have to be, AKA grandma. So, stay with my girls overnight. Lisa and her husband are opening Carnegie Hall. It is the annual Black Tie Cultural Award.
Wait a minute, they're in the audience or they're on stage?
No, it's the audience.
Oh, okay, I thought they were supposed to open.
Well, it's the first one.
Okay, oh, okay, but they're attending, okay. I thought they were. That's, I was gonna say, it's cool to go to. They go regularly or they just go to the opening?
It just goes with my husband. And that's all my Lisa's husband can get. One black tie event where I have to listen to opera. I'm good.
I'm not good with any of that, to tell you the truth. I'd rather be on your end and taking care of the kids. How far do you have to go?
Pine Court.
Where?
Pine Court. Yeah, on Pine Court.
Oh, is that, I was gonna say Pine Court, where all the sycamores and Waverly Willow and all that, okay. Where it is. I used to walk through there a lot. Used to, Kathy and I walked through no, Sycamore, it depends on which one you want to do. Where you go up to Waverly Willow to like Sycamore to Waverly Willow and around, yeah. So is it the one that's across? Okay. I've done that one too. But we used to do the big house. Yeah, we always looking for a place to where we could do it else. I wish I knew what was going on here. This came upon me the other day. A little, never bothered me. I have a little bunion there, but it never. It's just, I don't know what's going on. I think what he's doing is some stretching my back or flexing the back just to stretch the body. But maybe I almost flexed it or something. Yes. And my toe, like big toes, it's so swollen like up there around the toes. And, the nail bed, and, of course, I've got the bunion inside too, so it's all like inflamed. Even the top of the foot. Putting the ice on this. So this time it's covered with ice. Oh, please don't. It's weird. I had it down. What do you have? Oh, yeah. Do you work with that?
I stretch it as much as I can.
Water bottle is a good one.
And that's what all I can do.
Yeah. I think of Yeah, so that's where you definitely want to stretch, and you want to be careful. Because what ends up happening with a lot of people is they start to walk on the side because they're not able to flex the foot. They walk more flat-footed, so it's not helping. And then your shoes wear in a certain way where it kind of almost stops you from really getting that flex. But that's a painful thing.
It flares up every once in a
The
while.
first couple of steps out of
Oh, yeah,
bed,
5
right?
steps out
Forget
of
if you have to
bed.
go to the bathroom.
Good morning. 5 steps. First 5 steps.
I used to be good though. After I went down a couple of steps, it would feel better because I got the little. But this is like hard to put down. Yeah, because then it's affecting the ball of my foot. I've never had this, but enjoy. If you're heading out.
Yeah, I am.
Thank you for doing that.
Not a problem.
I might call upon you. We should get a couple of people out
It's not a big deal.
to set up. How old are the kids?
16 and 13.
Oh, okay. So they're pretty good.
Yeah, they're
It's got to be their case of emergency, yeah.
Tour. 2 weeks with this apparently one of them was a VA physician, VA doctor. And she said, go to the VA, you'll get certified to get SDA. I know. My mind is these guys that just overdrink. What do you think?
I might have had it years ago, but I quit drinking, so I don't know.
Me too, I did too.
What? How are you? All right.
It's cool. I just walked up to work.
Okay. Keep you awake. That's me. You were what, Army?
Army, yeah. Did you go overseas? Did you go?
I was on a tin can for 4 years.
No kidding.
Yeah, out of Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island. We went to the Mediterranean, the Red Sea.
Seventh Fleet.
Whatever, but I don't know now. I did the Berlin blockade, was part of that back in the 60s.
Earl, you mean the Cuban?
Cuban, yeah.
I was in Germany on the border, the Soviet, East German border.
I was in 61 to 66.
65 to 68, middle of the Cold War.
I got out right before Vietnam started blowing up.
I guess it's draft notice, but I joined the regular army. Most everybody that I went to basic with went to Vietnam. I don't know why. I don't know how. 98% of the guys went. I think I might run. Some of the guys went to Germany. I think I might run.
Run with the idea of like being
about Germany. So let's say here, I was Vietnam. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. You're right.
What was the? I'm not on board with the whole solar thing, but I know at one point the concern was battery storage. That is supposed to be
Coast Guard, somehow the battery chargers are just charging. Row boats, that's usually.
But these are for the solar package, right? So every solar farm will have a solar coast guard.
No, battery. Each panel uses electricity. Right. Okay. That's just a chemical reaction with sunlight. Silica with the vapor. And it goes out. It's creating heat. So the only thing that's the only downside.
Is that what they were talking about a while ago?
We're taking the personnel.
Yes. These had to do with solar.
The lines were being run, all kinds of issues and stuff like that. It was not in it. Let's give you a chance to get on the stretch. They're just connected right out the 7 down stretch. So when years ago when it first came out, there was a storage room and people had it and the panels they had on their house.
A friend of ours walked over and there was not going to have power.
Use batteries. So a car show those batteries set you off a hydrant gas. That's regulation.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be a lot of concern, I know. Chase happy, I don't know if it's green or happy that they have.
And they don't have it anymore.
Planning board might take classes, learning about it, so they can make better decisions about whether to get like bad things. What are the chances of, I don't know, there's like chances for that kind of happening. It has something to do with all the 17 K. It's so bad because they follow that like little brain doesn't take it all in. So, I noticed like, driving around now,
We go there, we have a meeting up there, and we go
going over Route 6. And what's sad is, even though
Friday during the day, let's go up there for
I guess if it's taking power, so that would
beautiful day, and we watch every Friday night. Skydiving. Yeah, you can watch all the farms.
That was all part of the way. They rerouted the roads, and that left that. You can't really use that.
Right, but I'm just saying, like,
So
just
right.
the
It's the power.
So I jumped in, strapped me all up, and I hooked to this guy, and we were up 14,000 feet. We dropped out of the plane.
Imagine putting something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right
before that, we were talking about, if
I
something
haven't asked.
I
haven't asked.
So I did it, now she's gotta go.
I talked to
Is that the only time you've done that? Or?
So imagine save the timber, the wetlands, and less traffic, not worry about having sewage system, a water treatment facility put in.
massive warehouse.
By yourself?
You know who that tenant is.
You have to take lessons or something?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. What a
With lessons, introductions for tenements. Has anybody something to know?
Well, not to disturb the wetlands. Chris was saying, so putting it on fertile soil is different.
Oh, yeah.
For wetlands, doing something with it makes more sense than it
They were coming out of a restaurant one day.
Well, that is all wetlands.
There weren't lights in there.
Selfish area.
And trip,
That's all.
When you make it into soda,
brother-in-law's German.
No, I mean like, yeah, if you built it up off the wetlands, that's okay. You could do it.
How are you? How you doing?
Little shop glass?
Yeah. I would too. So that
How'd you know? He says he was too. And I don't know how to roll. I don't know how to just.
But that was also his concern about solar. Who owns it?
Yeah.
So you can sleep in it because you're 16 hours.
He's got this little part of his uniform. He's like ready to go.
I'm good, thanks.
Easy way to get there.
Best way to do it.
Okay. What?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I forgot to do it in.
That's okay. Motion, we have a motion to come out, second?
Second.
All in favor, to come out?
Aye. Okay, who made it?
2024.
Sherry made it.
This is the end.
Old business.
Exemption returns. Put that in the minutes. That's in the minute. Okay. Old business, we have IT update, upgrade IT server for the town. Any comments on that?
I have a second proposal coming, I should have it next week for you. I'm not convinced what Mazzaro quoted us is great for us, so I'm just looking at an alternative solution. A gentleman that's doing the police department is going to quote us for the town side.
Well, you want, I thought you want a separation, segregation of,
It would be, it would be separate services.
two separate companies, or you're gonna use the same company?
Same company.
Okay. Hey, what's,
Let's see what they propose. Let's see.
right.
Let me look at our system.
Mazzaro said there was they were a little worried, or is it still a little worried? I mean, that's your, kind of your department.
I haven't, spoke to Mazzaro since I
I
asked
saw
for
the email,
network
they were
diagrams.
concerned about losing the system, I think
Well,
county lost some clears today, so.
I think you're paying them to monitor it, they should be in here fixing it, so.
I can't hear you.
I said you're paying them to monitor it, they should be in here to fix it.
I bet upgrading the server, that's what they were concerned about.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not convinced what they're offering us is the best service.
Okay, so now we have privilege of the floor. Please, we're gonna start with the right-hand row, anybody wants to come up, basically, be civil, courteous to all, your name and address, come up to the microphone, and your intellectual enthusiasm is certainly valued. Anybody from the right side of the room, which is your left. Yes, sir, come on up, welcome.
Thank you. Fred Morris from the Village of Montgomery. I'm listening to your concerns about the solar farms and the concern of the people and everything else that are in the area. I was just running a thought through my head that, like, do you conglomerate or just put them all in one area? How many solar panels were in that area? Because you put it like a 1.1 million square foot footprint. You're saving wetland, you're saving traffic, you're saving impact. And if you know where I'm headed that way, is you do away with the warehouse, you put a solar farm in that area, it's a win-win for everybody, except for those who want to develop. So that's for the residents, that's peace of mind for you, so you can sleep at night, so you don't have to worry about those people that you know, those people coming in and out, they will be in that area. So I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone down this way? Young couple in the back of the room? No, good, okay. Maybe on this side? Yes, ma'am. Oh.
No,
You can arm wrestle. Who wants to go first?
I'm reading this, I don't know if we'll qualify, but I thought we'd take our chances. Pomeroy is also doing canal transportation history markers, and so I would like to know if the town would authorize me applying for one. Might not get it, but I would need your approval to apply.
You have to, I'm a little lost in that.
We wanted to maybe get a marker for this. We don't have the exact site of the Colden Canal, which was the 1720s, 1730s. The impetus for New York State becoming a leader in developing canals in this country. So it would be someplace on Maple, it would have been someplace on the farm. I'm sort of reading that, I don't know if they would consider it, but I would take a chance and apply for it. And if they say, well, you know, we want canals that canal boats could go on, we haven't lost anything by trying. It was part of the Tinbrook. He used the Tinbrook. And I think he might have also dug some trenching. We're really, it's been a tough one to try to track down. But it was on the farm somewhere.
Okay. What do you need from?
Just your approval to go ahead and apply. I mean, we might not get it, but it's worth a shot.
Did we have that?
Yeah, but that was for the other markers.
Okay.
That's already, they haven't given us any decision yet on the other ones yet.
So it's approval to apply for the grant?
Yeah, just to apply,
All right.
that's
All right.
all.
Anybody on the board, we need to make a motion on that, or are you good on that, or?
Make the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This
Okay.
is just for the Colden Canal, basically.
Right,
There's
yes.
no other canals in the history of the town that you're aware?
Not that I know
So moved.
of. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Now I can get up.
Welcome
You know
again.
Ann Harbor. Welcome again, thank you. The public hearing for Blue Water is scheduled the same night as court. The last time that there was a public hearing involving Blue Water, there was a huge union presence. I was wondering if they needed a permit for mass gathering. There were about 300 people in the parking lot blocking people, and it was quite intimidating getting in. It felt like a coordinated effort between the town, the developer, the partnership, the local union rep, the president who is also on the IDA. That's just how, that was the appearance. It was very uncomfortable. I don't know if you were aware of this happening and why, with all of the people blocking parking, people having to park up and down on Bracken Road, why this wasn't rescheduled to another place. They had a Jumbotron lit sign on town property. I didn't know that that was even permitted. It would appear to be, the appearance is that the town is automatically sanctioning a project to move forward instead of allowing the free flow of communication between both sides. Somebody must have known about this because the increase in police presence was very apparent. There were far more police people here that night, and that's not something that just simply occurs.
I'll ask the chief, but I think that's unusual for court night because there's stuff going on.
That would be for court night, but for a planning board, you wouldn't
Well,
have
it
that
was
many.
court night.
Oh, that was
Yeah, just
court
so you-
night
yeah,
also?
there's a couple of
Okay.
different things here.
Thank you.
It was court night, so there would definitely be other officers here.
More than
We have repeatedly had and we have provided police presence for the IDA meetings, the request of the IDA, even the most recently, the Dollar Central school budget votes have gotten a little hectic, and they've requested and were provided police presence. We did not put any more officers on that particular night than we have been routinely with the regular IDA meetings. I think what you may have saw is because it was traffic court night, there probably was additional officers, and they're probably kind of hanging around, and that's probably the reason. I know I was given no notification by anybody officially to expect that volume of people, and I did, in fact, find out about it afterward. I had a sergeant contact me and said, just to give you a heads up, there's an awful lot of people here tonight. So we did not know that many people were gonna show up. I guess I would say in the future, we probably should anticipate this.
Yeah, we can, certainly, we have a huge parking lot on the other side, it's pretty much empty.
It's
So
dark.
that's something that we can direct them in if they, at that meeting or anything else, to park over the other side,
Yeah, I mean, as far as people, listen, very simply, nobody can block entrance and exit by law. You can't prevent people from coming into the town hall. You can't block them from walking the door. That's all law stuff. That's law. But the volume amount of people present, that's difficult to limit. But people certainly can't keep other people who they may disagree with from entering the building or allowing them to park a vehicle. And if that was what actually occurred, that was not reported to me by the officers.
It was what occurred. Walking up and down a dark highway at night with no lights is really uncomfortable. The number of people in the parking lot was, I'm glad I came in with somebody else. I don't usually get intimidated, but at night, I'm not so sure. It was a very uncomfortable situation, and it should never be tolerated by
I'll
this.
make sure that the
We-
officers.
yeah, we have a
in
lit
the
parking lot
future, I'll make
all
sure
around
that
the
they
side.
be conscious
The
of
back is not well
possible
lit.
accidents.
Very well, I just changed the lights. So,
Not so much the other day.
I mean, I
There's no
came out
sidewalk.
at night to watch the planning board meeting, and there wasn't anybody blocking anything. There was a lot of abundance
Volume. That's
of
right.
people, but you can't stop that. It's public.
It is public. I do appreciate the fact that it is public, and I'm glad that
I mean, it's
people
probably
were.
like a first come, first served basis for the
I
parking.
was there a half an hour early.
and I
it wasn't-
gotta admit, I think most of the police presence, our police department is very friendly. I think one of the best police departments around as far as the guys
No
are great,
question.
and the women's, but it's just you guys.
No question, it's a great
Yeah.
department.
What
I
about the-
really appreciate all of the people that are here.
What about the
It was just a
Jumbotron?
very uncomfortable situation.
Crazy.
And it really did feel like something was if you knew about it in advance and you knew that they were gonna be here, Jumbotron just doesn't appear magically.
I didn't know it was gonna be here. I mean, what they do is their business.
Is it permitted to just bring up whatever kind of sign that you want and put it in the parking lot on public property?
Well, I'd like
In
the
advance
signs-
of a meeting?
I've been letting the signs come in the
Yeah, the
boardroom all the
office
time.
before that.
But a lit sign in the parking lot is
I don't know.
is
what's-
that?
That's the first I knew that as I read your email, that I was at the meeting.
Yeah, I'm
I
in
don't-
receipt of your foil, I've passed
Yes,
it on
okay.
to appropriate people,
Okay.
trying to
I
get
didn't
the
know anything
answers
about
for you.
that, but
Okay.
again, that's subject to your attorney, I don't want to put you on the spot, but public displays of non-offensive material.
Right, and I don't know enough facts here to be able to speak on it. I also am only aware of this because of your FOIL request.
Any pictures or anything?
There are
Oh, yeah.
pictures, there are
Okay.
pictures
Little
all over
sign?
online and everywhere
It
else.
wasn't a giant rat or anything blown up, was it?
No, but we're planning on
Not
bringing
yet.
that one next time.
I'm used to the rat.
It's quite all
This isn't the
right.
place for that.
Thank you.
With all of this, I don't want, I know that there were people that left because they did feel quite intimidated coming in. It was dark. There's no sidewalk between the rear parking lot and the building. You're walking through the grass or you're walking along the road. It really was inappropriate, even tonight.
Well, we can make
walking-
accommodations, especially if court's going on, we can make accommodations. So
It's-
there is a walkway through there, but we have side doors up right up to here. With the police department, or something, we can make accommodations for that. If that comes about, which we can,
I anticipate
we're
this
pretty,
happening
we're pretty
again.
malleable here.
I do anticipate this happening at the special meeting that you will be holding for the zoning change. And I
Sure.
hope that really is a public hearing, because from the way that it sounded, that this was kind of a done deal, and I hope you will entertain the comments from the public regarding that.
We're not gonna do it at 8 o'clock in the morning or anything like that, so,
Well, I just hope you'll really listen to us,
Yes.
because there are some serious concerns. That zone has been changed twice before, and I know this isn't the arena for questions like that. All we ever ask is that you treat all of us fairly. There are grave concerns. This will be the third time in 10 years that this zone has been changed or is up for change. The other 2 times my property was rezoned, I was never notified. And I know that that's not a requirement for you to do. Zones can be changed at will. I just hope that with all of this, for example, tonight, walking in, there were about 25 to 30 union members that were downstairs waiting to come upstairs. And I know that these people had on the back of their shirts, it did say residents, but they were really only here to listen to what you had to say regarding the zone hearing that would be upcoming. They had no intention of remaining through the entire meeting to hear everything that was being presented. And I would request that you give Montgomery residents and taxpayers priority in speaking before entertaining comments from either the developer, the union reps, or union members that are only speaking to jobs. This is a meeting for the zone change.
Ma'am, you're not a resident, but we give you time, so.
But I've been paying taxes here for
I mean,
45 years.
I got you.
And that's.
But I'm just
my-
saying, we give you time, so.
I did say residents and taxpayers.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, come on up. Did you go already?
I just want to add to that, coming in, there were 2 other people coming in for court, and they were if they could have been late for their case in court, I don't know what would have happened with the judge. They would have got an extra fine or anything else. So
We'll handle
they
that.
could not find a place to park to come in.
We have more than one parking lot, we can handle that.
They parked around the building like I did and walked.
Well, I've got 100 parking spots on the other side and 12 doors, so we'll.
That's where I parked.
Yeah, we'll look at that. She's pretty good at that.
And they wouldn't let us up.
Public safety, #1, right there. So, yes, ma'am, sorry.
Karina Tipton, Village of Montgomery. I came from Taekwondo again, I'm sorry about my pants. I came from Taekwondo on Tuesday night to the Village of Montgomery meeting, and I got there halfway through. David Church from Orange County, his presentation, he's an Orange County planner. He was giving a presentation to the Village of Montgomery about how Orange County can support the Village of Montgomery with a traffic study, and it was very interesting. Luckily, Diane had it videoed also, so I was able to watch the full presentation, and we can send you a link to that also if you'd like. But basically, I wanted to summarize that for you in case you don't get a chance to speak with any of the village board or Mayor Brescia. But they, what he said is there's a couple of ways that Orange County can support the village evaluating traffic. One is to just pull all of the existing projects, which I think I had mentioned was a possibility to you guys before in a previous comment. And I'm not just saying that because I'm like, see, I told you, but he said that they could take all of that data, they could compile, his office could compile it. I suggested like a high school student that was interested in civil engineering or something, which would be like a really tedious project for a high school student to do as a civil engineer, I know. But they could compile all of, his department could compile all the existing data and come up with traffic study information that could be used to guide decision making and that process. And I know that with the RFP out for the comprehensive plan and to bring a master planner on board, it would be ideal if that planner could take care of all of that stuff, but it sounds like that planner selection is still going to be a little bit of a ways down the road. So I just wanted to bring this up as something that you might possibly want to investigate now to kind of get that ball rolling, because as we've all said to each other, you've said to this group, but I've mentioned to you before, infrastructure issues is what is going to kill Montgomery. I mean, which besides the water, the sewer, the roads, the traffic capacity, all of that stuff is really what's going to be burdening us in the future. So being able to get a head start on that evaluation might be really advantageous to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Left side, yep. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Welcome again.
Hi again. So the night of the planning board meeting, I did see Mrs. Malik, so I would like to say thank you, but I did not see any of the other members there. And if you were there, I do apologize, but I would just like to give her credit for coming, because not only did she come, she sat right here.
I want to make sure I heard everything.
Right, and I give you full credit for sitting there, because that's a hot seat. But I would like to say, prior to the actual meeting, when I walked in, I was met by the police department, and they told me that only the Blue Water Partners and the planning board were allowed upstairs. And that is specifically what I was told by one of your sergeants downstairs.
They did say that none of the people for the meeting were allowed in because court was going on until it got closer to the meeting.
And I was here.
I did come up and got my front seat.
But when the meeting started, were people
Yeah, they were allowed.
But I got here at like, I don't know, probably 7:10. I was here like 20 minutes early because I knew that it was going to be a lot of people and I wanted to see. But regardless, what actually happened was that Maureen Hallahan from the Orange County Partnership walked in right behind me, walked over, signed in, and she was allowed upstairs. So, and I know you didn't know this, that's why I'm just telling you. So, what upset me is why are the Blue Water Partners allowed to come up here when the planning board's allowed here and the general public is not? Like, that sets a very bad precedence of what is going on here, that the public's not allowed to come up. If it was a safety issue, then nobody should have been allowed to come up.
I can tell you that officially nobody from town management or anybody told the police officer specifically that. I can look into it.
And he was really nice.
Maybe there was another person in some other position that night, but I had not received any information to direct my people to tell nobody to come up here or not to come up here.
I will say that he was very nice because after I told him who Miss Hallahan was, he said, okay, then what's fair? And the other guy in front said, what's fair is fair and you can go. And then he made a comment, see how easy that was. So I said, yes, sir, thank you, and have a nice night, because I don't want to be rude.
Yeah, no, they were never directed to
But I would
disallow anybody.
They said, they did say, because when I was by the door, they did say it had something to do with the court, and that they wanted to wait until the planning board meeting was closer to let them in. That's what I heard.
Right. So
and then I did come in. Sure. I do think I might get a little special to get my front seat.
But I just ask that, in the future, the public do be allowed up, or everybody should be held. Like, we need to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, I don't think we have any purposeful segregation of anything, we're not, as far as management goes, might have been a miscommunication downstairs, and we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's your first time up tonight, so we're...
My first time tonight. I haven't been to the meetings the last couple times. I'm Jane Fierro, town of Montgomery. Today when I went on the website, just your general thing, welcome to Montgomery. As one of the most beautiful and appealing municipalities in the Hudson Valley, the town of Montgomery government offers a multitude of services to its residents. And it goes on about getting forms. But that statement really hit me, and it's probably the reason most of us lived here, because it is a beautiful and appealing municipality. Then I look in any of the papers and just see all these development projects. And that will not be a valid statement for long, and it should be considered. Over the summer, I wrote 2 letters to the board. Thank you, Tara, for acknowledging that they were received. On one of them, I asked to hear back from people. Not one person even acknowledged that I sent a letter, that I wonder if it was not even opened in your emails. And I feel as a resident totally dismissed by the whole board. And I just wanted to bring that up because I don't think that's really taking care of your residents. It was about the moratorium, it was about zoning changes. And it's really being dismissive. Thank you.
Anyone else? The guy in the back of the room?
You sure? Okay, I'll make a quick point, actually.
Uh-oh. I had to open that up.
You did it. You nudged the bear.
Don't get too close to the microphone.
I'm Kyle Charette. I'm the president of Town Montgomery Ambulance. And I think it was about 2 weeks ago we came here asking for some assistance. And just out of curiosity of has anybody reviewed it, looked over it? I know I haven't heard anything from my lawyer yet, so I was just kind of curious if this is going to be something that's going to be actually physically looked at, or...
Mr. Frank was, I haven't heard back from Mr. Frank on it.
I actually spoke to him today and he said he's working on it.
Okay.
I just haven't heard anything, so I was just kind of curious.
He's working.
All right, cool. So just want me just to... pass the buck, I got you. So, okay, so just in the future to direct my questions to the town supervisor instead of having...
Thanks.
Right?
I'm sure that he'll be the first one to give you any kind of information that we get.
Well, yes, but again, so I would just curious. I think I haven't heard anything, so I was.
When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think of is you.
Yeah, you lie.
Who's your attorney?
Is wow, now it's a brain fart. So 2 of them. Yeah, Brad Pinsky. Thank you. Well, that's what happens. You have 2 of them. That's what happens. Yeah, he's the guy at Syracuse.
Will knows who he is.
Okay. Yeah, he knows, so. But does anybody have any more questions for me though about it at all, or no? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your name?
Come on up.
Sure.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, board. My name is Shariza Hawkes. How are you? I just have some points to think about as we go forward and make the decisions that are before you. We've kind of covered a lot of this already, but one of the things I'd like to highlight to you is within the reporting of a new overtaking of Stewart International Airport, one of their visions is to actually ramp up the effect of tourism in the area. And they look forward to the growth in the area for tourism. Also, you can see that other towns in the record just, I believe, yesterday, spoke vastly on the income and the revenue being driven by, in fact, tourism. I also want you to know that I don't know if you get the finding statements or read IDAs about Blue Water coming in here. One of the things I think, and I have written each and every one of you to discuss some of this, I want you to keep forward and look forward. We don't have a greenway into this town. There's no dedicated area that has no harsh usage. If we put Blue Water in there, that's a harsh use. I don't care if it's just slightly out. It is a harsh use. Medline takes out 416. We already have a lot of business already coming in immediately off of 5. So as you go forward and you make these decisions, I also want you to understand the ramifications of investing in one type, and this is warehousing, and I know in many cases, we believe that's going to be the financing for our septics, our waters, and things like this. But I think we need to step back and look at who we want to be and where we want these things and how we need them made, not just to fulfill today, but our growth. Tourism, as I had said to some of you, it's like a honeybee. It's a cross-pollinator. It brings to our local residences and our local businesses the ability to grow and utilize those things. Warehouses, including Medline and Sailfish, they often have their own cafeterias. They're self-sufficient, and they do not open up necessarily to other businesses. Besides, when you look in the case of Blue Water Inn specifically, and I'm gonna go back, I'm sorry, I hit my pad, take me 1 second. When you look at their, the Gaussian curve of employment, they are actually hiring 775 in the first year employees. Out of that, only 25 of them professional. Now, I don't know about you, for all the water and all the septic, and Medline's Gaussian curve, or actually hiring curve, is not any different. It's 75% minimum wage workers. That's both. And most warehouses follow that, including temp. If you make $33,000 a year, and that includes your holidays, you buy your own benefits, you tell me what people have to spend in this area. We're not enhancing ourselves this way. And you think about bringing in 775 tourists, that's a heck of a lot of money than you're going to get out of 775 minimum wage workers. Now, you all have businesses and you're all invested in businesses. And we all know statistics can be turned, and we all know value of our area. I know there are goals, but I think we need to step down and step back and make sure we know the direction before we go any further. Tourism is in fact much of the future. If we abandon so much of our land, and I agree we need growth, we definitely need some warehouse or in a prime location, but if it's gone, what do we become? Is the tractor parade going to be the semi-parade? Is that what we're going to bring down our streets? And people, are they going to drive by? So what are you going to do to the small businesses in the area when nobody really wants to be here? And that's just a point. And then some of the things you'll find in the finding statement when it's talking about Sailfish, as you're evaluating that particular issue and the right to change the zone, which is really what's on your shoulders, it relates facts that actually are only coming from Orange County Partnership when they're talking about the labor force. My question to you all is, why don't we seek it from New York State Labor? Because New York State Labor will say, and even the federal government says, we have never been lower in unemployment in New York State. They quote 30,000 people out of the 564,000 across, say, 5 counties are unemployed. But what they're not identifying, OCP in this case, just to think about as you go forward trying to find what your truth is in this. How many of them are actually looking for something that pays $70,000 a year? They're not taking jobs because they don't want to make $12 an hour. Our children, if you've been told, and they quote, 20 to 24-year-olds are what's on the growth, because that's typically what's targeted, because someone like me, I'm aged out of that kind of job. So what are we telling the youth in the area? That we can't look forward to an area that has more ability to sustain tourism, which is the future of the millennials. Maybe not ours, but the millennials. And what are we telling them? They can't live here? You've been asked that. 775 out of 25 25 professionals. That's all for water, for septic, before a master plan, and the zone change.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
necessary.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.